Why imperfect bodies became the new luxury. There was a time when luxury in visual culture meant perfection. Perfect skin, perfect symmetry, perfect control, bodies edited, refined, and shaped until nothing remained unpredictable. For decades, photography and advertising built an entire visual language around this idea that beauty is something flawless, polished, and almost unreachable. But something has shifted. In modern photography and visual culture, imperfection itself has become desirable. Not hidden, not corrected, but valued, and in many ways, it has become the new luxury. At first, this seems contradictory. How can something once considered a flaw become a symbol of value? The answer lies in attention. In a world saturated with edited images, filters, and algorithmic beauty, perfection is no longer rare. It is everywhere. Every feed, every platform, every advertisement offers a version of idealized human form. And when something becomes too common, it loses emotional impact. Perfection stopped feeling special, so the eye began searching for something else. Something real. This is where imperfect bodies entered the visual language of contemporary photography. Stretch marks, scars, softness, asymmetry, natural posture, details that were once erased are now often intentionally preserved. Not as shock value, but as presence. Because imperfection signals something that perfection cannot easily replicate: a lived life. In fine art photography, this shift has been especially visible. Images that embrace natural bodies often feel more emotionally grounded than heavily retouched ones. The viewer is no longer looking at an idealized concept of a human being. They are looking at a human being who exists outside the frame. And that sense of reality creates emotional weight. There is also a psychological layer to this change. Imperfect bodies carry narrative. They suggest time, experience, and identity. A small scar may imply a story. A stretch mark may imply transformation. A relaxed posture may imply trust or fatigue. These details are not just visual, they are interpretive. They invite the viewer to imagine a life behind the image. And imagination deepens value. At the same time, cultural perception has evolved. Movements around body acceptance and visibility have challenged long-standing beauty hierarchies. For many people, seeing unedited bodies in photography is not just aesthetic, it is emotional validation. It disrupts the idea that worth is tied to physical perfection. And in that disruption, imperfection becomes powerful. Not because it is unusual, but because it is honest. However, there is another side to this transformation. When imperfection becomes visually desirable, it risks becoming stylized. Soft light, natural tones, carefully unposed bodies, carefully, uncurated aesthetics. What began as a rejection of perfection can slowly turn into a new aesthetic formula. One that still requires performance, just in a different direction. Now the pressure is not to be flawless, but to look effortlessly real. And that paradox defines much of modern photography today. Even so, the emotional impact remains significant. Because despite its contradictions, the embrace of imperfect bodies has changed how people see themselves and others. It has opened space for more diverse representations, more honest imagery, more complex definitions of beauty that are not limited to ideal proportions or standardized features. And in that space, photography becomes less about aspiration and more about recognition. In the end, imperfection became the new luxury not because it is rare in life, but because it is rare in representation. In a world trained to filter, edit, and refine reality, the unpolished human form carries a quiet form of value. It does not demand admiration. It invites connection. And perhaps that is the most expensive thing an image can offer today.